been watching the stories that we're getting, and it feels strangely familiar. Almost like the world is remixing old warning signs, actually. There's a lot going on out there with anime in the world, with our government, with headlines in Hollywood, just day-to-day basis on everything that's going on. It seems like, hello, Runrick. Runrick, thank you for joining us on this fine evening, and everybody else. But what's really strange is that it seems like a lot of our stories are coming to life. Maybe they're not coming to life in the exact same way that we all think that they are. But it seems like they're happening nonetheless. And it's not like we know or do not know if it's prophecy, or if it's people having visions, or if they're just lucky guesses and science fiction and fantasy is just tapping into whatever's happening. Or it's just people writing about what's happening and the world kind of conforms to those things, or there's no connection whatsoever. But Run'em Rick, thank you. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I've always been really bad at trying to read license plates. Sometimes it doesn't always, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's something in my own brain, but whatever. Thank you, Run'em Rick. Thank you for helping me out as well. But it's interesting because everywhere we look, the government is supposedly finally open, whatever that means, as well as every day more news is dropping about this conspiracy or that. We've got digital IDs rolling out in the UK. I haven't really talked about that on anything besides on like a Palantir video I did, but that's not about the digital IDs. This is something else that's going on. There's new surveillance systems dressed up as convenience, as well as in the middle of all that, someone decided that it was perfect in this time. Whoever it was deciding these things, thank you, deciding that these things were okay to then put out certain TV series. Like there's going to be a new V for Vendetta series out there. It's kind of funny. It's funny in a dark way, actually. Alan Moore spent his whole career trying to avoid his work becoming adaptations. Maybe he didn't try to avoid it. He put out his work, and then when DC would make adaptations or whoever would do this or that, he would then end up hating it. And here we are, living inside the themes he tried to warn us about in this very day and age. And it's not just him. There's Dune Prophecy coming out, which is quite a fantastic. There's going to be a lot of people out there that may dislike the Dune Prophecy. What is Dune Prophecy? Dune Prophecy is going to take place a few thousand years before the Dune series by Frank Herbert. But on the Dune Prophecy, I believe, is going to be, it's on Amazon Prime, I believe, or Apple TV, one of the two. But they are currently filming that. As well as I'm going to talk about some other things like The Traveler and Dune Messiah. And most people won't know what The Traveler is. It's a book that I read a while back. And I think it just really ties in everything on this fine day. They're all circling these same ideas, though, that a world is drifting deeper into chaos, into control, and people are trying to remember what it means to stay awake. So tonight, I want to talk about where these all connect. We're going to listen to some clips I've picked out. We got quite a few. It's going to be great. This is going to help tie all things together. The digital systems that we're building, the stories that predicted these things, and the questions underneath everything. How do we stay human in a world that's trying to make us into automatons? And it's like telling us that it cares about us, but it really doesn't. And we can tell because in the actions, there's a widening gap between the us's and the thems. So thank you for all joining us. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe, like, and share to your friends. This is Magus in the Media. Welcome to Awakening in the Fallen World. Let's get into it. All right, great. I'm really working on that introduction. We're going to do better and better every time we do it. Good evening, Dusty Wild Sea. Thank you for joining us on this fine Thursday evening. What I've been talking about is what we're going to talk about this evening. I got a bunch of clips for us. I got a bunch of connections to make. We got a lot going on in this strange world. And what do I mean by strange? The world is stranger and stranger every day, it seems. It seems like between solar geomagnetic storms, strange comet spaceships that are flying around the sun, to TV series, science fiction, and fantasy, as well as anime, really hitting certain nails on the head on a day-to-day basis, and then these symbols coming out as we get to watch them unfold. How does the governmental control structures, the techno-oligarchic control structures do what they're doing, as well as then having like our TV basically like imprint like the next steps on a day-to-day basis? It's kind of out of control. But it's not all lost. And what I'm talking about when it's not all lost is that we're not black pill. There's a reason that I'm constantly wanting to talk about the magic in the media, because Magus doesn't talk about who, but it's more of a we and a what. Because hello, Kyva Rose. Thank you for joining us on this fine evening. I hope you are doing well. What I'm talking about is ancient Persians with their term magus. They were talking about, yes, individuals. They were talking about also a caste of individuals, like a priest class. Magus means magi. Magi means magic or magician or priest. And I think it's really interesting is that there's been a schism that has happened throughout our day and age where people don't actually understand how we got into the position that we're in. And I've done a live stream before where it kind of talks about magic through the ages, and it wasn't very detailed. It was more of the idea of what mythology and storytelling and magic and how it integrates into things. But what's really important on this kind of structure is this structure is really trying to tell us that you don't have the magic to control your own nervous system and its properties, that only the priest class does, those in control of the media. Well, in this day and age with social media and everybody having a camera and everybody being so globally connected, it isn't true anymore that there has to be a separation of priest class. We actually all can become priests. We can all become magi. Robert Anton Wilson and his Discordians back in the day, this was, in the, say, 80s and 90s, right? The 70s, they were talking about that. Let's not just have one pope, let's have many popes. And so that is just what we're trying to move forward in this kind of day and age. And you're definitely right, there are elephants in the room. The elephant in the room is that if the investing class says, run 'em Rick, the investing class grows its wealth faster than the economy and buys everything that can be bought, where does that leave us in a year or in 20 years? I mean, that's a great point. I completely agree. Where does that leave us in that time frame? Basically, I think that the idea is, as we're rounding the corner, it's 2025 and 2030 is right so very close for us, that you will own nothing and you will be happy. And so I think if we can understand that there are these mantras out there that we don't have to let control us. Another saying Robert Anton Wilson had was that he talked about, yes, we can have these conversations of a ruling class and people in government and these black op departments, and then you get the techno oligarchy, and you get all these different ruling classes and these structural systems that run up. But what Ra was trying to talk about in all his work, right, is that he says, yes, there may be an Illuminati, but you got to remember that it is you and your 5 to 10 closest friends, the people that are in your circle. And I think that's really important because we all have nervous systems, we all have bodies, and we all have what I believe to be something called a soul and a spirit. And if we connect all those things, we become an embodied being, a a being who is every day striving towards beingness, striving towards having a fully developed archetypal structure, that then we don't, since reality is so moldable, I think what's really interesting is that maybe reality, we can help create the system that we're looking to want to live in, right? William Blake also talked about how, he had a saying, right, that it's create your own system or be enslaved by another man's. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that we can update that and talk about how we must hybridize this system. I think it's another way of going about it. Hello, Charlie Wild. What do you got to say? The pattern consciousness creates reality. Nothing is really finite. In order for the age of polarity to end, I had something profound to say, but no. Yeah, really interesting is that we're trying to stay grounded at all times. And it's like, what is really interesting to say is that there are patterns of consciousness, and that these patterns of consciousness aren't just these woo-woo things, but they're archetypal structures that are and lay the foundation and bedrocks of our unconscious, subconscious, and personal, like egoic consciousness that we run the intentional grounds towards. And it's that these archetypal patterns, if we don't get a hold of them, other people are running them for us. It's not that nothing is really finite, because there is finitude and there is infinitude, right? That we must have these two patterns so we can have an actual grounded reality and a grounded conversation. One of the interesting things that Nietzsche brought to the factor in this conversation is, I have two ideas, and it's one of them is the master-slave dialectic, and the second one would be Nietzsche wanted to break down just wanted to just destroy metaphysics, and he thought it was not the right way to go about doing things, because we wanted to live in this place right here. And so that's where it comes back to the ideas of the embodied experience. And it's in the embodied experience where we can take control of not only our nervous systems and the patterns and symbols that are being put into them, but then we can help mold and create the world around us. You can live the life you want to live, even if you're doing it one step at a time. And so it's not about having profound things to say, but I do understand, and I like your comments. Please keep the comments coming. We're doing this together. But I'm always trying to preach the embodied experience, because if it's either in a martial way, a martial arts kind of way, which I think everyone in some form or another should find some kind of movement practice to be able to understand their structural systems in your biophysiological system. But to go back to what Robert Anton Wilson was trying to say is that if you put, you like what somebody else said, that you are only you are the best, you are like the 5 people you put yourself around. So make sure you put great people around you, no matter who they are. And so if you do that and you all become your own magi, to break it back into how we're starting this off, if we all have the ability to become our own priests, to become our own warriors, to become our own kings, and to become our own lovers, right? Priest, magi, magus, those 3 terms are interchangeable. Also, what we get when we're talking about the thrice great Hermes Trismegistus, it's a very similar thing. Not only does it mean that he has these 3 king, warrior, priest ideals, it's probably he's also probably a lover in his own right? But what we're trying to do is we're trying to help transcend our current state of consciousness, right? And consciousness isn't just what I think and how I feel and the thing that projects out into the world, but consciousness, if we can get rid of the Cartesian dualism, we have the ability to understand that it's just not subject-object. Subjectivity is my consciousness and the object is a material world, but consciousness is what interpenetrates all things. And that goes back to the ideals of, I personally come from a place where I think that it starts with the ideal or the idea, and then materiality stems off of that. And so when we're talking about these things, is that, and we're going to get into these clips, and I think it's really important to lay the foundation of the more, if you think about the black pill ideal, is that it's all messed up. We're all screwed and there's nothing you can do about it. Going back to then the World Economic Forum, how they're talking about you will own nothing and you will be happy. And I'm trying to move us into the ideas that if you become your own Illuminati, then nobody can actually control you. And this is something that's growing steadily for a long time now. And it seemed to have maybe gotten stale in the early 90s with these types of things, but not really. It's just things go underground and then it comes back up. Like as the world turns, the world kind of starts to calm down, and then people don't need to rebel against whatever it is that's trying to put them into a box or trying to tyrannize them, or whatever the words you want to state when you have to rebel against it. This levels of authoritarianism, dystopian reality, that it's not a dichotomy. It's not like you're going to live a utopian life inside your realms, because there's always going to be conflict, since human nature breeds confliction. But the idea is that if we can get into the path of the adept through the ages and work on our mental states, work on our physical states, and work on our spiritual states or our religious states, have something that you can fall back into, then the world changes. And right now, I think there are so many, due to one of the major catalysts being the technological age of the internet. I think the internet, as a pretty funny comedian always talks about, is the Sam Tripoli out there, to all you tinfoil hat watchers, right? Is that the internet got away from him. What's he mean by that? What do they mean by that, who say those types of things? Well, what they're saying by that is the internet got away from them because the internet was created inside CERN, right? That's not news to everybody, I hope, that DARPA and CERN and these different agencies were the ones who developed the technology to be able to intercommunicate across the world. And so if you think about it, and you can go to then, I highly recommend people going to Truth Stream Media. They have The Minds of Men, and it's one of the greatest documentaries I've ever watched. They really break down where we've come from the 40s, 50s, 60s on up, with the interconnection of understanding the human nervous system and the human brain, and how then technology boomed forth from integrating with MK Ultra, integrating with the CIA's departments and what was going on in all that time. And so that's not for me to talk about now. So just head on over to Truth Stream Media after this or sometime, because that documentary is long. It's 4 to 6 hours long, or something like that, 3 to 6 hours long. But one good car ride, right? Or one good evening with the family. Just really dive deep into it, because if there's a history, and that's kind of what we're going to, again, have this continual dialogue, I think, is there's a history that lies underneath all things. Our exoteric history, just like the exoteric religions, there is an esoteric religion and there's esoteric histories. Doesn't mean it's not true, right? It just means that not everybody knows about it. And that's for a reason, because leading up to what we're talking about is that if everybody knows about it, then reality does do exactly what's going on right now, right? What does reality do? It gets very bendy and shifty. Novelty increases, information becomes parabolic. We're past the age of information and now on to the age of intelligence. What I mean by that is the age of AI. AI is speeding up so fast that we can remember a day when we didn't have it, but when was that, right? And I mean that metaphorically. We can name it when ChatGPT showed up, and when we started getting little inklings of it. It was released before then in small little waves. How for a long time the cyberpunk genre, into that kind of, interesting enough how the cyberpunk genre just came to me, is like deeply integrated into the magical community as well. A lot of cyber witches in the early 90s were the rebels. It's all these, the ones helping create the internet, who helped create the internet age, who helped create the AI or discover the AI, whoever you are out there, no matter what you believe, could be discovered, not created. But those were the psychedelic users in the 60s and 50s. Those were the people who were diving deep into the exploration of consciousness. And I think that when you start diving deep into what is consciousness, how did it arrive, and where is it going, and you start to understand what was going on with both manufactured dissent in the 60s and true dissent, because there is levels of organic dissension coming on with the hippie movements of what was going on with Vietnam, but also that there were certain institutions also helping push these things along, the CIA being one of them, right? You can just read Chaos. It's a great book. Great book. It's a terrible book. Terrible as in when you read it, it makes you feel bad. But reading it also makes you understand. It's a great book, as in everyone should read it or listen to it on Audible or however you go about taking in your information, because it kind of breaks free your conception or misconception of what was going on in the 60s, what was going on with Manson and his family and all those types of things. And it's just really interesting how deeply that connected that is to then, say, the minds of men, as in what was going on with the creation of the internet, creation of technology, of interconnectedness, understanding the brain and the human nervous system connection into the world. It will. Dune or Foundation itself. Right. I mean, Isaac Asimov and Frank Herbert both were tapping deeply into those realms. They were visionaries, right? Dune with his jihad, and Foundation with trying to make sure that we can collect the data, do the thing, because things are ending and we need to make sure that we can move forward. I haven't read those books in a long time. And I only read the first one. That is something I got to get back into. I had a hard time with the Foundation TV series. We watched the first 5 minutes or 8 minutes and turned it off because the acting was so terrible. The cinematography looked great, but I couldn't get past the acting. It's awful. Instead, we watched Frankenstein, and that was amazing. Video essay coming out soon. Subscribe, like, and share. But what I'm talking about, to move into what we're going with this is, and we're going to move into Dune, is that why it's so beautiful that these stories can help shape our lives is because Dune showed you something. It showed you what then we would get with the Jedi in Star Wars, and it showed you how we could understand the mystic sages and magicians of our past, as well as the samurai, right? So there are two archetypes that the Bene Gesserit and the Jedi inhabit. And there's probably more than that, but I'm going to talk about two main ones. And those two main ones are the magician and the warrior, right? You could call it the Hierophant, you could call it the priest, you could call it many things, but I call it the magician and the warrior for right now. Logicians, a lot of things. But why I'm talking about these two is because it goes back to the embodied experience. This embodied experience that we are trying to have on a day-to-day basis means that we try to be intentional, we try to be aware, we try to make sure we're better than the day before and continue working towards levels of, it's a woo-woo word, but levels of enlightenment, levels of transcendence, levels of just becoming a better human. I like to think of it as becoming a superhero. I like to then take that from superhero because that's like an old school me. I like, in the last 20 years, I've tend to think of it more as I'm trying to become my own anime character. But from there, what I mean by anime character is that in this video, in this live stream, in this conversation, we're talking about Dune in the beginning. And Dune Messiah is coming out, as well as Dune Prophecy is coming out. Both have, one is started filming and the other has ended. Dune Prophecy is ended, or is just started, and Dune Messiah is ended. So we're going to get a Dune Messiah in 1 year. 1 year and like a month. I'm skeptical because those are my favorite, part of my favorite. I love Dune. I love Name of the Wind. I love many other stories. Those are in the top, as in King Killer Chronicles and the Dune series. I love both of those. I love all of the Dune series. All 6. Never read Brian Herbert, his son's work. Probably never going to. However, that's what leads us into what we're talking about, is Dune Prophecy stems from Brian Herbert's work, one of the Bene Gesserit books that I'd have no idea. But when I'm talking about why watching these things, why reading these books are so important, why then taking these lessons from these stories, is that you can become your own magician, your own magi, your own priest class. And why would we want to do that? It's not for Harry Potter hocus pocus magic. What it's for is the, again, evolution of your own consciousness, your own soul, your own body, your own person, your own individual, your free will agency that you have in the world. It's time to take that back. How to awaken in the fallen world is that we're taking back our agency from whoever took it away. The best way to talk about it, and there's many models and ways to explain what and how it was taken from us. The best one I've come up with, besides, there's different tiers. One of them is, obviously, there are a group of techno-oligarchs, an aristocracy, a ruling class that has slowly manipulated the system so much through time that now there is such a gap between freedom and control that the rebellion is happening. Whatever that looks like. Hopefully it isn't one where there is actually any clashing. It's all here and in here in the mind and in your own home, because that's where it starts. And that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is that we have to take to the streets, and one day maybe, but not today. Today, we do that by reading and practicing. And when we watch, we are integrating and trying to see what doesn't work and take on what does. The Bene Gesserit have many skills. And that's what's so cool then about watching these stories, watching Dune. Even though I disliked part 2, I think it's trash. Cinematography is amazing. They ruined the story. It's its own universe. I watch for entertainment and for little pieces of beauty, because it's still there. There are pieces of beauty. But when you go so far away from somebody's work, like Frank Herbert, like, it's not that hard to stick to it. And then manipulate where you have to. It's a different medium. The medium is the message, says Marshall McLuhan. And so it's really interesting then how when you manipulate a medium, how then you get certain wizards like Denis Villeneuve, or however the hell you say his last name. You get these people who then have their own nervous systems, have their own ways of interpretation, their own dogmas and ideologies, and they take a work of great fiction, of scripture, like Dune, and they go away because there's a slight misconnection, a miscommunication between their brain, their book they read, the words from that book, because it's not just about the words, it's the substance that's being transmitted with those words, that then when you take it on, you are within the realms of where Frank Herbert was. You're on Atreides in Arrakis. You are Jessica, who is now trained with the Bene Gesserit through time, the Harkonnen and the Atreides, this eternal battle that has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. You are Paul Muad'Dib. You are Paul Atreides, who has been trained by Duke Leto Atreides in military aspects and stoicism. It's not like the Duke Leto in the books is not like the Dune Leto in the movies. He was a great actor in that. Oscar Isaacson, I believe, who then also played in Frankenstein. I'm not good with celebrity names, but he's a great actor. But that dad was more of a positive stoic Duke. But in the books, he was more separated from that. And so Paul got to integrate these kinds of military aspects like the art of war and the art of military and leadership, right? These main things that used to get trained way back in the day, hundreds of years ago. Not even that long ago, I'm guessing. But he has that. He has Bene Gesserit training. He has Mentat training. And so with Mentat training, you get training in pure logic, in being basically your own computer, being able to use Occam's razor to its finest and fullest. You get to cut through all the bullshit, and you can hear and see things that most people can't. You are the Spock in its greatest of ways, since there was a Butlerian jihad. Maybe one day we'll have to reach that same thing where you must never create a computer or a robot or an AI in the image of man's mind, in the image of man. And that's something that we're getting really far away from. As in, we're getting really far away from it, getting closer to that. We're getting far away from our own minds and getting deeper into the age of technology. We've let AI kind of take over a lot of things. And when it's up to Elon, which a lot of it seems like it is, as in he's one of the techno oligarchs who is currently running the control grids and the control system, that then all of a sudden we get farther away from our ability to make decisions on our own. And I think that's really dangerous. Before we get into Dune, I do want to play this little piece just so we all understand what's going on. And so as we do it live and I get faster at understanding how to do this, what piece are we going towards? We are going to first move over to right here before we get to Elon. Just so everyone knows, I see things and I watch stuff, and this is one of them. Dune Prophecy. She is the Bene Gesserit. We don't want to mimic her. We don't want to mimic the Bene Gesserit. And the reason is they've gone so deeply into their own genetics and breeding systems that they've lost course of what a moral structure is. And so that's why we're not completely falling into becoming a Bene Gesserit. Right? It's the same thing with the Jedi. So this is where we're at here. Dune Prophecy Season 2 has begun filming. The season will be 8 episodes long. It's going to be great. I'm excited because some things are happening that are correct. Not everyone likes that show, but I do. And that's okay. But what I'm getting at here is that we must have a fuller life, a more embodied life with our gaining a cleaner perspective towards things. And so if we can take on the magician's path and the warrior's path, what we can do is, right, all these books around us, they tell you exactly how to do it. So it's not like there's some magical society as the mainstream and the extremist materialists and extreme religion want to talk about, is that like there are magical societies, there are secret societies, but these secrets aren't so secret. It's that you just must become initiated into them, read them, practice them, take them in. They are like fire. They are like a sword. They aren't wrong in and of themselves. There's nothing wrong about them. There are practices that you should not do. The sorcerer's apprentice who wants to gain what they call in yoga siddhis, right? Magical powers. These are low magic. That's not what we're here to do. When you must defend yourself, or in quick-witted times in this day and age, these things will help you out. And they may happen in ways that you may not think, right? As in, it'll appear in certain ways that all of a sudden this connection is made, the synchronicity happens, right? It may look magical, but it's just happened the way that we didn't think about it, that we didn't know it was going to happen. All channeled writings, says Charlie Wilde. It's an idea that consciousness needs to express and manifest. If Frank Herbert, Isaac Asimov, Tolkien, and Jordan hadn't written these stories, they would have still appeared. I like that. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, that's great. I love that. Elsewhere, in a similar form, he goes on to say, in a similar form, I'm rambling incoherent nonsense. No sense. Well, you don't have to be a downer on yourself, pal, because incoherent to some and not incoherent to others. The idea is that through these things that are coming out in our world, our consciousness and our minds are trying to express itself. Our experiences, we want to know what's going on in the world. And as the world ever clearly goes into more chaotic times in this fallen state, we need these writings because they help lay a path. They're a model to look at the world and then to analyze not only our experiences, but our society's experiences. And then hopefully we don't fall into them, right? That's what I'm getting at. However, as AI and robots are on their way and they are coming, we get this beautiful little image. 1 million, if you guys didn't know, 1 million Optimus bots a year is what Tesla is trying to bring to us. Interesting enough. Elon's calling it the fastest production. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's go to the side. The fastest production ramp in history, and he's not exaggerating. Scale model, Fremont pilot line targeting 1 million Optimus units per year. Gigafactory, Texas aiming for 10 million a year. Mars someday? Question mark. 100 million unit line isn't off the table. Built for sustainable abundance, labor-free productivity, and universal care. From factory floors to Martian soil, Optimus might just become Tesla's biggest product yet. And Elon's got his own saying on what this means to him. This is coming from Mario Nawfal. Thank you for putting these things up on X. It's a really interesting world we live in, and this isn't fake. This is going to happen, whether we like it or not, whether it happens really, or if it's more like a total recall type of thing. Total recall by who? The great Philip K. Dick. He is on the thumbnail. He is an image that we have on the thumbnail. And the reason he's there is because he's a Gnostic visionary. He is a prophet of this time. I don't know what this says, as in I didn't listen to it. I don't think we have to. I just know that things are getting weird. Elon thinks that it's going to do everything for us. These robots will do everything for us. You will not have to work, basically. We're going to go on an universal basic income. Some people think it might not happen. I hope it doesn't, actually. I hope the world figures itself out, and whatever system it is that takes over is something that helps every single human being as we pull ourselves out of poverty. Like, when some people can have everything and everybody else has to have nothing. When there are billionaires, there are more billionaires today than there were in the 1960s, 1950s. There's like 12 billionaires. Did you know that? In 1960 and 1950. You can fact check me on that. But now there's hundreds of billionaires. What does that mean? What does money mean in a world like that? In a world where a lot of people struggle. And then you get a small amount of people who are like in the Hunger Games, eating nonsense, having banquets as others starve. That's the kind of, some of these dystopian young adult fictions, they do this and they kind of tap into these things. And that's one of them, That's one of them. Even though Marie Antoinette never said, let them eat cake. That's kind of that kind of thing. That's where that kind of stems from, is like, as in this Victorian age, everyone's dressed up fancily and eating all this amazing food as you get the serfs and the impoverished. They're struggling on that day-to-day basis. And this is a gaming system that is that's not really needed, and things can be better. Anyway, let's move on from there. We'll go over to other things in the news today. We're going to get Avengers coming out soon. Avengers Doomsday. I haven't watched so many of these because most of them are awful. But on the magical route, Elizabeth Olsen, who plays Wanda Maximoff, who actually has Wanda Maximoff has some great comic books that I highly recommend. If you're out there, you should read House of M, and then you will understand WandaVision a lot more. So in House of M, very similar things happens. Wanda has so much power. She taps into what? chaos magic, right? And it's not like your chaos magic of the early 90s, right? But that's kind of where it's stemming from. She taps into this underlying etheric current where she can manipulate energy, matter, material, manifestation, and do all these crazy, beautiful, terrible things where she goes nuts. And she puts everybody under a massive hallucination. Where have we heard this before? Naruto. She kind of puts everybody under their own Mangekyo or Infinite Tsukuyomi instead of everyone living in the dream world, which she actually does that in House of M. She puts everyone in their own little dream world where they're doing something else. Some people who are mutants aren't mutants, and other people who are mutants are not mutants. Vice versa, so forth and so on. But her and her family are basically rule the roost. And she did this because her mind, her mental state was breaking because of her kids, I think, died. She was supposed to have these kids, but as she was giving birth, they didn't make it. But in this world, they did. And she was pissed and she messed everybody up. Mar-a-Lago, exactly. Thank you, Dusty. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it without saying it. It's crazy. Trump's eating fucking lobster and shrimp dinners as they're fighting over SNAP benefits and trying to bring the government back. My point is, that's wild. It's wild that the government was shut down for so long. Yes, we felt it, but at the same time, do we need the government? These are questions that need to be asked. Do we need the government? I think we do. At least that's what I've been brainwashed to think. And I'm not so stupid and think that obviously we need benefits and we need social structures and infrastructure and institutions. But we're so far past the idea of the institution being good and it helping us that how does it feel? How does it feel, everyone out there? How does it feel to know that your world is not what you thought it was? That one day you woke up and you realized the American dream was a joke. You realize that there are people lying to you, and not only did they start lying to you now, they've been lying to you from the beginning. And if you can think that at the moment of your birth, that they were already lying to you, people in control, governments of the world, royalty, and the oligarchs, and that you had no idea. They didn't teach you magic when you were born. They didn't teach you how to read correctly. The Rockefeller Institute, and we're going to go a little tinfoil hat here, the Rockefeller Institute, in cohort with the Rothschild and the education department, created the very structure of learning that you have today. And so, not only that, the techno oligarchs are and have been poisoning us from the beginning, our minds, our bodies, and our souls. And what I'm saying is we don't have to live that way. And it's not a burn the world down, but it's reorganize the models that we see and witness this world. Isn't it crazy that what Alan Moore was talking about so long ago, not that long ago, he wrote V for Vendetta in the 90s. But the dystopian nature of the UK, of everybody being tracked and traced, and you needing a digital ID to get anywhere. The whole Orwellian structure of that world is now coming true in 2025. And it's not just happening, it's been slowly integrating for decades. It's interesting. So, as we move along, just to finish up what I was talking about with Elizabeth Olsen saying that she will not return in the Avengers Doomsday. Marvel is a pale shadow of its former self in the age of the Avengers. The Avengers was amazing when it first came out. They were there to protect the world from outside forces. And now, no one even watches these shows Most of them are on TV series on Disney. The movies that come out are having rewrites and reshoots over and over and over again. And so once you get the final production, it feels so disjointed, and the characters and the acting are terrible. There's so few good Marvel shows anymore. And so she won't be back for Avengers Doomsday. I think her character really turned out to be something great. But I didn't like Doctor Strange 2. Doctor Strange, the first one was amazing. The character of Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme is like, and you get this is the magical side of Marvel with these two characters. And so what I'm talking about here is that the siddhis of the yogis and the magicians, these are the things that we're talking about when they talk about siddhis. If you meditate a certain way and do these yogic practices, do these magical rituals, do your daily practice, you will gain some kind of powers. And what has happened in our day and age, and it's been going on for a very long time, is that the new age Gaia spiritual nonsensical world, have missed the point of what it means to be a practitioner of magic or of spirituality, right? Of Buddhism and Taoism, of Hinduism, of the Western esoteric traditions. The emergence of AI, says Charlie, has caused a mass awakening. Consciousness cannot evolve faster than itself. It is inadvertently trying to assist humanity, but fracturing it at the same time. Watch Foundation. Okay. I will try to watch Foundation soon. There's a lot of stuff to watch. I'm trying to write scripts daily and get the videos out there daily, and the Foundation will happen. It has to. Either through Isaac Asimov's book, just his book, and I'll do a video that way, or I'll watch a season late at night, write a script, and we'll talk about it. So thank you. And he finishes with, not finishes, but says, Multiverse of Madness just completely undercuts all the developments that occurred during WandaVision and Agatha all along. I never watched Agatha, the Agatha series, but WandaVision was good. Yeah, I completely agree. All of a sudden, it's crazy. All of a sudden, it just blows up in our faces, and the world that we thought we lived in with Wanda Maximoff and all her powers, it was awful. I watched it and I cringed, and I wanted to watch more because how cringeworthy it was. What they did to the Illuminati, right? So here's another of those symbols that are running through the media, the magical symbols running through the media. In the Marvel Universe, you get the Illuminati. The Illuminati are a group of the strongest superheroes in that universe, and they are doing things underneath and below, like what everyone else knows what's going on. They are running the show. They are making sure these massive incursions that are happening when multiple universes are going to have to destroy themselves. So one's got to win out, and then so they got to go and they got to kill people from that other universe and destroy it. And those superheroes are trying to do the same thing as our Illuminati, better than those universes' Illuminati. And so these guys are a net good in a way, but only in the way that means their moral structures are more Machiavellian. And so they are supposedly doing it for humanity's good. Interesting enough, that's probably what Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk think they're doing. Right? It seems that way. I don't think they're like cackling behind the scenes trying to kill everybody. They may be doing that, and I want to give them the freedom to think that that's like, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But a model that I've come to find myself in is seeing that then they actually think what they're doing is helping, no matter if it's a small amount of people or a large. So you either get the Illuminati's version of what's going on in like the Multiverse of Madness, where they're going to kill off other universes, make these grand moral gestures, and they've done other things, right? So it's who is it? Reed Richards, Professor X, Black Bolt, Namor, Captain America, Sorcerer Supreme, and Beast, I think, was a part of it. There's been a few other characters, but that's our Illuminati. And they're the ones who are trying to help the world. So there's another thing that happens in Dune, right? What's Paul doing in Dune? He finds prescience. He, through his spice trances, through having melange just everywhere around him at all times, finds prescience because he is the Kizwach Heteroch. He's not a hero, but he's the creation of a long Bene Gesserit scheme to produce the Kizwach Heteroch. So through his Bene Gesserit training, which is Prana Bindu training, as well as learning of the weirding way, he's learned how to control his mind and his body through practices, meditation and pranayama, mind practices like you find in the 8 limbs of yoga, right? Your dharyanas and your dhyanas, being able to focus singly on one thing and then being able to destroy that thing, be able to change that thing's colors, whatever that is. They call them tatwas. And in doing so, as well as many other things they learn as a Bene Gesserit, right? Integrating that with his mentat training, being to control and still his mind, being able to be a logician like a computer. And then from then on, moving into the weirding way, which is his martial prowess. So he's got that. He's got, like I said in the beginning, he's got Leto's skills of military, and he's also been trained by some of the most greatest warriors of that time. He falls along in his prescience being created. And then that prescience being able to see all things in a way, being dislocated from time space, being able to finding non-locality, something that happens when you ingest certain chemicals or you do certain practices like the yogic practices, or go on and take certain rituals of like the Western esoteric tradition. I don't quite agree. Charlie Wild says, is basically touching samadhi, prescience. Samadhi, I think, is closer to integration with all. So reaching a level of stillness. And so I think that's different. And I think that's different due to he's agonizing within a spice trance. So he's still in the first. If there's 8 limbs of yoga, and 2 of those limbs are your ethos and your moral structures, and then you start with your asanas, right? So it's like gaining your control of the body to such an extent, right? That's that prana bindu training, and all your natal or your meridians of the body, and then from there you reach pranayama, which is your breath control, which is what they're doing as Bene Gesserit. Also as Jedi. Also, I've read comic books where Wanda Maximoff is doing that exact same thing, and so is Doctor Strange. And so this is a motif that we're finding of the magician and the warrior through time, right? And then you move on to your single pointedness with your, and being able to then just like make that single pointedness go away as we move our way up through the limbs. And then at that top one, that's samadhi. It's the complete annihilation of things, right? Something like that. And so prescience is lower down on the scale on things, even though it's integrated with all of those things. They call it the spice agony. When you break your consciousness free, which we're going to find in the Traveler as we get through in this conversation that we're having on this fine evening. Thank you, all of you who are here with us. Thank you for joining Magus in the Media. I actually truly appreciate it. I have a great time here with you all. So we're slowly wrapping our way around this kind of conversation as we find our way into, right, the golden path that Paul Muad'Dib is on, and that we're going to find in Dune Messiah as it comes out in 1 year. And this golden path that Paul Muad'Dib is on, that he cannot get off of, and he ends up doing something else. His son has to take it over. But I was talking about the difference in how people and rulers and people who have a lot of control in this system, in systems as civilizations go, either can veer towards many different tracks, and Paul is one of them. We talked about a different one before this, like the Illuminati from Marvel, right? Or whatever the techno oligarchs are trying to do and those that they are puppets for. That, how do we know what's going to happen in the future? What if there are people who know more, have more information than we as the public have? And is it fair? These are questions. These are fair questions. And is it good for everyone to know everything? As we've seen in Full Metal Alchemist, right? The manga and Brotherhood. As the boys do human transmutation, try to bring their mother back, you see Edward confronted by truth. And behind him, Robert Flood's image of the Tree of Life and Ed's door of truth, gate of truth. And when you're trying to perform such alchemy as a sorcerer's apprentice, not knowing what kind of powers you're truly dealing with, the law of equivalent exchange comes out to the front. Nothing shall be gained without something being taken, right? I'm paraphrasing the law of equivalent exchange. Something must be sacrificed, and Ed sacrifices his leg and arm so he can witness the truth. Not that he knew that was he was doing, but he witnesses the truth, and it was too much. There's too much information. And so what happens if you do that to the mass public? What if you give them too much information? Dusty, you're completely correct. Too much truth leads to madness. And as Plato called it, there is such madness as divine madness if you have been able to build up your frame and your foundation enough, your human biosphere, this bioelectric body. If you have had the ability and the training, then when you go into these altered states of consciousness, you have the ability to take that energy and have it be manipulated in a way that helps you transcend current states and circuitries of your own humanness. You're still going to be human, but you can be a better human, right? Or if you're not ready, you burn out your nervous system. The nervous system will just completely, and we know people who are burnouts, not even just because of drugs, but because of their own mental states, their own body makeup, their own biochemistry tended towards that. And that's what happened. And that's sad. That's sad. Because we're all human and we all have that in common. Even the us's versus them's. And so if we could always remember that, and that's where these structures and these systems of practice come from, is these ancient teachings. But it doesn't have to tend towards woo nonsense, non-understanding. Things that are profound don't have to always be jargon and gobbledygook. It doesn't have to be Nordic people, right? Whoever's talking about that. Or aliens, or grays, or interdimensional beings, right? I tend towards interdimensional beings. I think, due to my own experiences, whatever you call these beings, these things, there could be that, right? There could be extraterrestrials. I love X-Files. There are many things that are profound and unknown. But what we're trying to do is we're always trying to ground those back down into the earth. And that's why these magical practices stem from, first, as Plato says, know thyself, lest ye know geometry. You cannot enter the doors of the academy. Right? So what does that mean? That means learn the foundations of philosophy, of science, and of religion too. I think those mystical practices all base themselves in a moral, ethical structure. And even the pagans had religion. They worshipped things. And then at that same time, there were esoteric structures. And so I think it's really important before we get into the more dystopian V for Vendetta-ness of our life that we lay these basic foundations of what it means to be an adept or practitioner in the world. So and I think Edward talks about it best it happens early in both, in like, what is it, episode 2 in Lior, for all you anime nerds out there. In episode 2, they go to Lior, and there is a priest, the bad guy, a lower level pawn in the world of this Full Metal, that they had to go and they had to see. He was performing great miracles. And as he was basically bypassing the laws of equivalent exchange, you cannot, change something into something else without equal value being given or lost. He was creating from nothing. He must have a philosopher's stone. The great alchemical elixir, the red ruby that can manifest and create from nothing. This is very, very new agey. It's very spiritualist. It's sophistry. It's lies. Because you don't get something for nothing. There are laws. Call them karma. Call it equivalent exchange. There are things that happen. Thank you for all being here. There are things that happen to us. And what I'm trying to tell you is that Edward and Al, when they go to Lior and they witness this religious man, this priest, he had a philosopher's stone, but it was a fake. Just like the red ruby powder trick that we learned with Manly P. Hall in his I can't remember the book name back there, but Manly P. Hall talks about it, and it's in the allegories of the adepts, is that to make sure that an adept, a student, a neophyte was worthy, he would give them a red powder. Some of them would run. Some of them would do nothing. Some of them would run and try to create gold so they could become wealthy. And then the red powder would evaporate, or the teacher would disappear, and then he would have nothing. And then whoever that person using this red powder, the neophyte or the sorcerer's apprentice, would just become an apprentice because they're not a sorcerer, right? They would get run out of town, right? Something like that. But what happens with Father Cornello in Full Metal Alchemist is Edward and Al come to town, and that there's a moment before they go and confront Father Cornello. They're talking to one of his followers who wants to bring her boyfriend back. He died. And Edward and Al, going through what they've gone through, sit there. And he pulls out a book, and he exactly goes through how to make a human. And he's very scientific about it. He knows exactly how to do it, because that's exactly what they tried to do with their mother. And so what ends up happening is that he talks about Icarus. And after he goes through exactly what humans are made out of, he says, all those things could be found at your local shop for mere pennies. And then she says, blasphemy, how dare you? And he goes, there was a story of Icarus, this man who flew too close to the sun. And when he got so close to the sun, his wax wings melted and he tumbled to the ground. Oh, us mere humans. And then he kind of like smirks. And Al's like, brother, because he's talking about them. They flew too close to the sun. They saw truth. Truth in Plato, epitomized as the sun, is the good, and it burned them a little too much. And so he's trying to tell her through allegory, through myth, and through his own levels of alchemical science, that what you're asking for is nonsense, and it can't happen. Just like Father Cornello cannot create from nothing, something from nothing, I gotta make sure what he has isn't the true philosopher's stone. Because those boys still have something they're journeying for. and it's bringing their bodies back. We all have something that we're journeying for. We're trying to become whole again, as Carl Jung talked. And so as we move forward in this story and we understand that we have our own obligations as humans in this world to produce, to make sure our families are safe, to make sure our bodies are a temple, to make sure our minds are sharp, to make sure that we have a moral and ethical structures, no matter how it is you do that. Make sure that they're sound and they don't harm anybody. And you don't harm yourself, but push yourself. That we now live in a world where our prophets and our visionaries are science fiction writers. And some of them have gone a little astray and others have to steal from these other ones. Philip K. Dick is one of those great Gnostic visionaries. He's on the thumbnail, but he's in a digitized form because the digital world is on its way. And not only is it on its way, it's already here. V for Vendetta talked about it. How everyone will be tracked, traced, and controlled. And for instance, when you see V for Vendetta, you see the Guy Fawkes mask. People, I don't know the exact, the burning of the parliament, right? The blowing it up, and that whole thing. Guy Fawkes was not a good man, supposedly. That's not what we're getting at. We're understanding the symbol. The V for Vendetta mask is now turned from that symbol, interesting enough, as we move into the major topic of this evening, is that this should be interesting. HBO announced V for Vendetta, the series, another adaptation of Alan Moore's work. Well, this mask, as you can see, is also moved into anonymous. So whenever we see anonymous out there, this is the mask that we witness. It started supposedly as a autonomous organic rebellion against the system, against the matrix. And very quickly, like all rebellions, like all groups that are trying to break free from things and trying to make sure that there is a checks and balances to even the Watchmen, right? Just like Alan Moore talks about in his Watchmen comic book. Anonymous got taken over by the FBI, by the CIA, by three-letter agencies. Got taken over. There's rats everywhere. Alan Moore doesn't really like people adapting his work. The movie was great, but Alan Moore hated it because in the movie it was super black and white about Guy Fawkes, right? V for Vendetta. He was the good guy in the movie. Even though he did a little sketchy things to Natalie Portman's character, really sketchy things, terrible things, you still liked V. And the bad people were the government and the parliament and the people in control, the guy who kept screaming. And then the detectives were his little pawns. Alan Moore doesn't like these things because in his comic book, it was more gray. V wasn't always the good guy. He did sketchy things. V for Vendetta, the comic book is better than the movie. So I highly recommend you just go out and read it. But what that is talking about is this system. But let's see. Here's another one. Live action V for Vendetta by Culture Crave series is in the works at HBO and DC. James Gunn will executive produce. Well, that's pretty terrible. James Gunn, is this going to be a funny V for Vendetta series? You know what I'm saying? Like, what has James Gunn done to deserve all these TV shows, movies? Running DC? Now he's going to do V for Vendetta. I get it. I see it because he's the director for all these things. He's taken over DC. So he's going to obviously executive produce V for Vendetta since DC owns V for Vendetta and it's going to be put on HBO. It could be great. I'm going to reserve true judgment and only crap on it because so far a priori experience states as in my experience beforehand, the knowledge that I have beforehand, the patterns that I see stay that this could be hit or miss. Great. Let's listen to the great Alan Moore talk about his Hollywood adaptations. Let's add a little spice. Let's add a little Moore's life to this, huh? Let's hear the great magician, Alan Moore, the magician. He knows what he's talking about. Don't always agree with everything he says, but he says a lot of good things. He's really wise. What has he got to say this time?
An anarchist, a magician, a visionary, and often described as the best graphic novel writer in history. The man who lives life on the margins has hated Hollywood's gloss on his dystopian visions, from V for Vendetta to The Watchmen and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But he's finally written for the screen.
Handle the film exactly as I want it to be done, in a medium that I'm interested in exploring. Yeah, that's terrific. Hollywood clearly hasn't had an idea in the last 2 or 3 decades.
So this is your purgatory.
Hollywood hasn't had an idea in the last 2 or 3 decades, right? I mean, he's right. Come on.
This is my purgatory.
Now go down to the purgatory.
I met him in the crypt of Delaprey Abbey in Northampton, one of the locations for his film.
So you famously not wanted
That's
films
Rico.
of your work made. I guess that hasn't really changed here, has it?
Absolutely not. It's the thing that I'm dead set against is basically it's adaptation. It's the fact that Hollywood can only recycle things that have already been done.
Did you hear that? Hollywood can only recycle things that already have been done.
Or adapt things from media where they weren't intended as films.
His mix of serious and banal unfolds in his beloved town, where the Working Men's Club plays host to a bleak and graphic journey through purgatory. And burlesque dancers conspire with clowns to force flawed characters to confront their demons and vices.
Where do you get that darkness from?
The short answer is from Northampton. This is
Right.
in some ways, it's an absolutely average town. It is right in the geographical centre of the country. In many ways, it is in the political centre of the country and the economic centre of the country. This is more or less where the money runs out. In every other sense, this is a very unusual town. Most of the violence in British history, all of our big internal wars, they have ended in Northamptonshire.
Doctor, I think we're losing you.
He has a cameo role in his nightmare world, but says there's a part of him in each character. Most of his comic aficionado followers, though, are male.
The sexual violence.
All right, that's all I wanted to get at is his complete and utter dislike. Alan Moore's got some weird stuff. Him and his wife, or partner, they created some more taboo comic books. But that's doesn't really matter. The idea is that Alan Moore's upset, and he's right on some things. Hollywood has lost its creativity. I can answer this question. Thank you. The movie is more about complete ego dissolution into a full unified consciousness acting an idea of rebellion. Earlier, you touched on the idea that you didn't believe in sparking rebellion. Why? And then you say, the pattern usually calls for it at this point in the pattern. It may or may not. Why? Because no one... Violence isn't good. So that's all that needs to be said. Violence isn't good, and hopefully we can get through it without that. Pain, giving birth to a new world is painful. And I hope that is something that just we find is just that kind of pain. Maybe it happens on our minds. Maybe, one way or another, life is hard enough. We don't need to create more harm. And it's true. Yeah, that was an interview with the vampire. Anne Rice did a really great with that Parisian cover. Yeah, that's true. But as we move into our dystopian nature of what V for Vendetta was trying to do, my point in talking about this is that it's really important. It is also inevitable. I know, it is inevitable. It'll be interesting. That's why I say train to be a warrior. Train to be a warrior. I just posted this on X and in my Instagram. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Very important. That statement is very important because it's better to know and not have to use it than need to use it and not know how. Because you can't just learn how to be a warrior. It's not the Matrix as you can just download it into your nervous system yet. It takes time to learn how your body works and interacts with the world, how to use all of your structural systems to be able to move and interact in the world properly. And when somebody is attacking you, the traditional style of things as in like the more spiritually traditional style of things with the body don't work as well as the more mixed martial arts styles of things. As in, you got to know how to be on the ground. You got to know how to stand up. You got to know how to use stuff in your hands. If you can learn these things, then you can tend to your garden and you can wait. But it's best not to go attack dragons that are not on your path. Don't go after monsters that aren't on your path. It's as easy as that. That breeds chaos and it creates more karma. And so what we do is we tend to our garden and you interact with the world as it sees fit organically. Things will happen. You will have to make decisions both on an individual route and a societal route. And that's okay. And that's going to happen. All great things will happen, whether we can see it as great or not. But what isn't great is whatever this means, right? This V for Vendetta world, this dystopian world that Alan Moore, as well as Philip K. Dick, saw. As we can see, Britain, as of November 5th, Britain's digital ID push is premature and dangerous, says CoinDesk. Wonder why. Oh, we're doing Volterra. Right. As well as Charlie says, no, not that type of rebellion. I do agree that the horror of a violent rebellion wouldn't work. V for Vendetta destroys Parliament, which has been the symbol of the illusionary structure that has. I agree. The thing is interesting enough, if we don't gain control of the media manufacturing system, then anything that happens like that is going to be skewed, even though we're questioning all of things, right? Thanks. I like the wizard accent as well. You know what I mean? And so if we can gain control of the reality in a way where we can have people understand that truth isn't always being streamed from the mainstream, then that we must at least question things. And I think that's happening since over the last 20, if not 40, 50 years. I mean, since the 60s and 50s, we're, breaking free from that illusion that the government and, the powers that be have our best interest at heart. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's funny. That's funny. Yes and no. We can't help it. These ideas are all around us. And so, it's true. There is there's the manufactured illusion, but the idea is that we don't play sides, right? There's no sides. You're either for freedom or you're against it. And that is the truth. And you either have an ethical moral structure or you don't. You either understand that there's more to materiality than that, and that there's a consciousness, and that consciousness is all pervading, that things stem from the idea on forward and not from materially on up, that we can then get to the deeper understanding that there are two placements over top of each other. There's something that changes and something that stays the same. And that with that, we can have a conversation about how our nervous system interacts with the world. I know, manufactured consent. Thank you. I lost the consent part of the words. I agree. Thanks, Caleb Lee. Thank you. And I mean that sincerely, because as we're doing this, I'm getting better daily. So I'm trying to do this better. My moral systems stem deeply from, well, Carl Jung states that our moral structures all stem from the religions of our past. However, you can dissolve, and it doesn't have to be ideologically motivated, right? I think ideology is the enemy, one of the enemies, let alone my own ego self is the enemy, right? That's the great illusion, right? As the Maya, as the Buddhist state. So I'm more hermetic, more Buddhist in my thinkings. But obviously Christian symbols run rampant within my mind, which is why then why I get along with the Western esoteric tradition so well, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but the idea of harm none, right? The golden rule. But yeah, I would say more hermetic Buddhist, right? But moral. I'm just trying to be a good person, right? I agree. Ideology. You cannot not have ideology. I completely agree. I'm not somebody who's against dogma. You can't get away from it. So I completely agree with you on that, Caleb. And you make good, I see the path and what you're getting at. And so there is we all have a religion of our youth. Ideology, I mean, in the way of isms. Right. I'm trying to get away from those things. I'm very Platonic in my thinking. I base myself on an old world, right? Because an old world thinking. I like the ancients. I like Plato. I like Stoics. I'm a Hermeticist. I have many of those things, but they're just, I'm human. And I think all those things stem from the human mind, the mind-body connection. So that's where I'm at there. Neither here nor there. Neither here nor there. I practice the Western esoteric tradition. So a lot of the Golden Dawn practices all stem from, and the adepts of the old stem from the esoteric Christian traditions. Right? So, but it's more hermetic. So it intersects with the Hellenized world of Alexandria and the Gnostic viewpoints, as well as the Neoplatonic Iamblichus. Iamblichus is a theurgist. And so those theurgical practices are things that I thoroughly enjoy and what make the basic foundations of my morals, my structures, as well as I've practiced martial arts for a very long time. And so, as Bruce Lee says, take what works, discard what doesn't, and make it essentially your own. But I do understand that I have Christian symbols just running rampant within my own unconscious. So that's my long-winded statement to say that. To move on, just so everyone understands where we're going here, right? Is that the first digital IDs launched today as of October 18th in the UK. That's crazy, right? And so from the UK, we go to this nice little conversation. Attaboy. These are just, you guys are, I love where we're at. Right. Caleb Lee says, do intentions matter more? Or do results matter more? Is it the means that matter or the ends? You're trying to trap people into a question into like a certain way of thinking when you ask those kinds of questions. Those are leading questions. I do thank you for the questions though. It can be both. Do things that work. Have intentionality. You can't get away from it. I'm not utilitarian. I am, as Devlin just stated, more of a romantic, right? Thank you, Devlin. What do you got here? Yes, those nailed it. Emerald Tablets, not so much, but LBRP, middle pillar, meditation, pranayama, martial arts, study the ways of the ancients. It's it right there. Oh, I've picked one, Caleb, don't you worry. Let's move on into... The point is, it's not about my viewpoint. You see, read my work, as in watch my videos. All the Western esoteric tradition is my viewpoint. That's it. But also, I've integrated the Chinese and Taoist systems into my very body. I've practiced Chinese martial arts for a very long time, and they integrate Taoism and Buddhism into their practices, as well as, the other martial art practices, like I was talking about. It's really important. You can't just have the traditional Chinese structures and the Taoist structures. You need the Western structures of boxing, or the Japanese structures of jiu-jitsu, and the Thai structures. And so again, I wouldn't ever call myself certain things like a chaos magician. I don't like that, but there is a way to do things, and that is to be hermetic, be a hermeticist, be a scientist, understand your nervous system. Sounds like the medieval Kabbalah to me too. Yeah, exactly. Marsilio Ficino, for instance, right? Marsilio Ficino is brilliant, as well as the Giordano Brunos and the Hermetic traditions. Dame Frances Yates, brilliant book. But Christian Kabbalah, right? It's just Kabbalah, the Hermetic Kabbalah. I love that work. Ike Baker from Arcanum, shout out to him. He's a brilliant man. I highly suggest everybody listening to his work, reading his work, as well as he's teaching classes online. And I think what he does out there is fantastic, and it sounds like a good man. A love for the ancient stuff and a love for deconstructing it up until the Middle Ages. Beyond that time period and into the Enlightenment, I think you get turned off. Yeah, down with the Enlightenment. I agree. Cartesianism on forward is nonsense. We needed it, and we needed to get to where we're going so we can have the technologies and have the materiality and have the life that we're living right now. But I completely agree that the Enlightenment period kind of ruined the world. Yep. It took spirit out of things. But the history of the world and consciousness as it unfolds is perfect, exactly the way it is, for us to be having this conversation today. But yeah, postmodernism, can't stand it. It's awful. Deconstructionism, just in and of itself, is like Scar from Full Metal Alchemist only being able to destroy with one hand and not having the patterns of creation with the other. And so, you know what I mean? For all you anime nerds out there. So it's like, it's about becoming whole. And whatever symbols and metaphors and motifs, whatever the mythology, as Joseph Campbell talks about, that you're looking for and trying to find, I say find it, right? Find it and integrate it into your very, very being. I'm going to share this. Just so you know, this isn't fake. The digital ID symbols and structures,
not be
it's
able
happening.
To work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital.
All right.
And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that. Because
you will not be able to work without digital ID.
Fair-minded people, they want us to tackle the issues that they see around them. And of course, the truth is, we won't solve our problems if we don't also take on the root causes, looking upstream to tackle poverty, conflict. And that is why
they want to tackle poverty and tackle conflict. Yet we have people with billions of dollars, and we're not somehow figuring out how to, I'm not talking about, changing the capitalistic structures of things and getting into, right, the socialism or communisms or anything else like that, or any of that politics. And I don't even want to touch on the politics part of it, because we're talking about the individual in a society. But you can't help but talk about the polis, right? But at least let's get away from this Hegelian dialectic of a two-party system or structure. And that's not even what the UK has, right? So they have a completely different structure, and yet they are the stomping grounds for the coming of this digital ID that is already there now. It's not even coming, it's there already. And so it's really important that we all find our place in the world as these next 5 to 10 years unfold. And it's not, it's not even far away from us right now, because look at this. I saw this today, right before stream, and I was all like, this is perfect for our stream today. And if you're just listening to it, I'll tell you, Apple launches digital ID in the US, letting users add IDs like a passport to Apple Wallet and use them at TSA checkpoints and 250 plus airports for domestic travel. Sounds great. Sounds fun. Everything's on your phone. You don't have to go anywhere anymore. Your phone's right there with you at all times. It's a convenience. Interesting. Convenience, right? If it's a convenience, it's good for you. If it's easy, it's good for you. But what I've come to find out is most things that are easy can be a trap, right? If you're not paying for it, like with Facebook or any of these social media things, you are what's being bought and paid for, right? But that's just me. We're just figuring it out as we go along. Got some thoughts here from people. Thank you, Charlie. Scratching it from the record. No worries. Caleb's very enlightenment oriented, and I do get it. Personally, you think morality follows laws and rules in general. I agree, and if that's what we're talking about, enlightenment, you're completely right. I also think that it follows laws and rules in general. It's just not some woo nonsense. It comes from somewhere. Moral structures come from objective structures, so there is such thing as an objective truth. I agree. So you and I are on the same path there. Why not get into those structures? Caleb loves Hegel. Phenomenology of Spirit. It's a wild book. Not much of a Hegelian myself, but that's cool. The structure is an illusion of left and right. Agreed. Conservative and Labor are two parties that have been voted in and out. No other parties ever win the elections. Right. Now we're getting the hand with the puppet strings going on. Right. Interesting enough, both parties, as Charlie says, coexist of the same groups of wealthy people that went to Eton, Cambridge, and Oxford. Says Charlie. I agree. A lot of them go to the same places. Yeah, you're completely right. Interesting enough, those schools aren't as much in the mainstream anymore. And so we got to figure out how to do it different, right? Create your own system or be enslaved by another man's. Oh, you've read The Philosophy of History? Nice. I have two. Phenomenology of Spirit. That's a good one to read. Anyway. So Apple introduces a digital ID, a new way to create and present an ID in an Apple wallet. Great. That's what Apple says. It's going to be amazing. TruthStream Media. Go and watch and listen to their things. They are amazing. It's a husband and wife team. I hope I got that right. That's what I understand of them. I think she deals with most of their social media, but their work is brilliant. As you can see here, the PSYOP is getting people to believe there's a difference. Palantir CEO says that a surveillance state in the US would be better than letting China win the AI race. Would it? I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't. And from there, we move on to the Solari report. Let's add a little humor into this. Tim Dillon is hilarious. I saw him live. He was amazing live. This is Tim Dillon. Catherine Austin Fitz shared this. I have been waiting to play this because I think it's hilarious.
And Bannon, who's kind of on the other side, is going, I hate this tech oligarchy. I hate them. And I don't want anything to do with them, and they scare me. But they have all the money. So half of the Trump administration is people that are genuinely going, what can we do to tank the economy, crater it, and then build it back our way? How do we usher in a surveillance state that's more draconian even than the one we have now? How do we eliminate any constitutional checks and balances on what we want to do? They believe the American government has failed and they want to replace it now. This isn't like hidden. That's a substantial power faction within that administration. People that want to get rid of the American government and replace it with an AI government or a straight up oligarchy of tech feudalists who don't believe in representative government. They believe in buying you off with crypto, which will be biometrically linked to you when you're born. You know, it'll be like your eyes blink and you've got however much crypto they think you need to survive, because there's not going to be any jobs. These are the conversations that they're having. The jobs are going to go away. And then what are you going to do with all these people? Well, you need to surveil them. You need to find a way to give them money. But I don't think you're going to be traveling. They don't want you traveling. They've even said that. Larry Fink has come out and said, hey, folks, you know, we're in the period where all these assets are being tokenized. It's all going on the blockchain. And, you know, we're beginning a massive transformation of the economy. You could call it the fourth industrial revolution, but it is a massive transformation of the existing economy.
See, when the comedians are talking about it, we have to listen. We have to listen. We have to listen. And I think it's really important because that's exactly what's going on. You will own nothing and you will be happy. You will live in small little compartments and we're going to have 15-minute cities. I don't understand how it's going to happen, right, with the 15-minute cities. I don't think it's going to be as easy as they think, but we're getting things like what? 3-Eye Atlas out there, comets that maybe aren't comets. We're getting geomagnetic storms. We're getting massive amounts of hurricanes like we've never seen before. We're getting tornadoes in the Midwest that are bigger than they've ever been in years and years. And I'm not saying that these are things that aren't natural, but what I'm saying is that as reality and consciousness and information speed up, as people are starting to become aware of things, as our sun goes through solar minimums and solar maximums, as all these crazy events take place in our universe, in our solar system, and on our planet, and in our small little worlds, that we can't but help not to have things change through time. And so it's going to get crazy. And as it gets crazier, the people who have more power are going to try to manipulate the structures, the social and political structures, to suit their needs, even if they think it's the needs that are best for the most, right? The more utilitarian needs. If you have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, right? That's maybe the metaphorical or analogical way that most people are, like these people in power, are trying to see it. We're going to try to save a bunch of people. We're going to try to do the golden path of Paul Muad'Dib. But actually is taken on by Leto, his son, where if we don't do this thing, a lot of people, if not all of humanity, will die. That's what happens in, spoiler alert, in Dune, in that series, is that people are going to die, humanity will die out, and what are we going to do about it? So you plebes out there in the public don't know these things, which we're going to get Luna of the Senate talking about UAPs here soon. And that the idea is that maybe she thinks that it's like, or maybe that's not her thoughts. I don't know what her thoughts are, but she states that there are people who think that if we let this be known to the public about what they know about UAPs and these things in the world, if the public would know, it would cause mass hysteria. So how do you slow roll massive change in the world? I don't know. But what I know is go down, become embodied. So we got some questions. Never read the Phenomenology of Spirit, but I have read his philosophies, right? We got that. Have I read the Zohar? I have studied and still am studying Hermetic Kabbalah. So I've read a lot of work, Zohar. A lot of that stuff is deeply intensive And so it takes a lifetime of practice. What are the benefits of Hegel's phenomenology of spirit? He argues that truth is not static, but it's a dynamic process that unfolds through time, right? So that's a good one. He talks about the dialectic, right? So that's why it's really important as well. The Hegelian dialectic of the master-slave, the powerful concept within the book. It illustrates human identity is separated and it's not intrinsic, but formed through mutual recognition in a social context. This master-slave dialectic is the separation of two things. It highlights power complex that is dynamic with dependencies and recognitions of individuals. So he's very on the individual. The basic foundation of continental philosophy kind of stands on Hegel. I don't really agree with a lot of Hegel's premises and theories, but doesn't really matter. The Hegelian dialectic is something where you have a thesis and the antithesis and you have the synthesis, right? So it's a problem, reaction, solution. So this is something we can see in our world. So reading Hegel is hard. Reading philosophy is hard. It takes time. Read it sentence by sentence, figure it out. Things through the world change through time. I'm not going to read this one. That's funny. This is an extremely dangerous line of thinking, but if you were to create one world government overseen by AI, which by nature is a reflection of collective consciousness, is that a negative? These are questions. Read Jonathan Hickman's line of X-Men, and you will see a battle between humans, mutants, and Legion AI consciousness. It's really interesting. These are questions that we can ask our science fiction prophets. The Lisan al-Ghaib. Peter Thiel talking about the Antichrist. Bingo book, right? It's happening out there in the world. Peter Thiel, founder of Palantir, and part of the PayPal mafia. Oh, the benefit of the Zohar. That's a great breakdown, thanks. Off the cuff, right? We're doing it live. Benefit of the Zohar. I think that you could read other things before you were to read the Zohar. I highly recommend The Tree of Life by Israel Regardie and start understanding the Tree of Life and its structural system. The Tree of Life is a system that theurgists and magicians of the Western esoteric tradition have used for a very long time. It's been integrated into the Hermetic tradition, the Renaissance periods. It's predates Hebrew. It predates Christianity in Hebrew. It's like Egyptian, predates it's Pythagorean, in its numeral musical structures. It's the backbone, right? If you look at it, the Tree of Life sits within the Flower of Life. These are images that are laden in the unconscious structures of the mind. I would call them archetypical images. Thanks. Archetypical images within the very structures of consciousness. And so you can lay the frameworks of the esoteric tradition on the Tree of Life. There are practices like the Middle Pillar practice, as well as other practices to do with that. And I think that's a great way to go. Zoroastrian, right, with the Persians and the Magi. It goes back for a very long time, and who knows what it went back before that. Tim Dillon is hilarious. That's what we just played. We don't have to talk about it, and we don't even have to listen to it just because I feel like we're on such a good routine here. But Trump says he declares the old financial system is over and a new crypto-based era is here. He says it. It's whatever, as in it's happening. And so we all got to figure it out. And that's moving us into the blockchain and the integration of blockchain. And that's where everything's going to lay itself on. And so let's try to understand all these things and move into it really well so we can understand where we need to fill in all of the blanks. As we move through this beautiful live stream, if you haven't, subscribe, like, and share so we can continue doing these and we can have these beautiful conversations. And I think this is going to be a really important understanding of what the next topic that we move ourselves into is, and something that is latent through all of these things. Part of the Hegelian dialectic of the us versus them and the problem, reaction, solution type of structures of how to move societies and individuals in societies is an idea of cognitive dissonance and a psyop. And I may not agree with everything that Sean Ryan does or says, but he has very interesting guests on his podcast, and here is one of them. And so let's play this one as we doing it live. Let's bring up, he quotes the alien UFO UAP stuff, and that's what we're moving into. Is that a psyop? When the New Jersey drone sightings were happening right before the election, do you remember those? Has that gone down the memory hole? I love Hegel. Has that gone down the memory hole of everyone? Do you remember the UAP sightings? Do you know what they are? Do any of us know what they are? So he puts up a video on that explaining how we're in the middle of a psyop. Here we go. Are we ready for it? Let's make it big.
I want to get perception. So this is how does this person see the world? And if I can modify your perception.
How do you figure out how that person sees the world?
So beliefs first, okay. Values, identity, and tribalism.
You're trying to figure out somebody's perception of the world. When you are researching that, putting pen to paper, what does that look like?
There's 6 needs, and I want to look for individuals in society and where are most of them on this needs map. Those 6 needs are significance, acceptance, and approval, and the final 3 are intelligence, pity, and strength. So I know instantly, just by understanding you on this needs map, I know where your fears and your insecurities are. Better than probably your therapist that's been working with you for a year and it's been a minute and a half in a conversation.
Okay, I gotta pause this so I don't forget. Okay, so let's bring me back here. We're gonna reshare that in just one second. Caleb, I'm gonna say these other comments here in just a second, guys, don't worry. But Caleb, are the Chinese light show drones just practice for drone warfare? Okay, yes, they are. I completely think that. I also think, and I don't remember which one, it was the second newest Tom Holland Spider-Man where he faces off against Mysterio, and Mysterio, who is Mysterio, right? He's the bad guy, one of the bad guys of Spider-Man. He creates illusion everywhere he goes. I love talking about this. This is a theory me and friends have had, that when we're talking about these things, is that was one of that Spider-Man with Mysterio. If anybody gets to it before I do, No Way Home. It might have been No Way Home. I don't want to look it up, but it might be No Way Home. Whatever it is, it's the one where Mysterio uses all these drones to create bad guys and monsters, which then no one knew were actually just drones, and he was creating a massive light show. And so I'm not talking about China and these things. Tom Holland is also the bomb. I like Tom Holland. I do. I agree. I like most of those movies. I think he's a good I like all the Spider guys who have portrayed Spider-Man. It works with the multiverse thing. He seems like a nice guy. I don't like all his movies. Seems like a nice guy. Doesn't matter. My point is about the Chinese light shows with the drones. They've used them in movies. We don't know what, the drone technology is crazy. What if, again, theory, we're going rabbit hole, we're down the rabbit hole, is that the drones are there to create and I'm not saying Project Blue Beam is 100% correct or is even real or whatnot, but we have to know. Blue beam, huh? Right, Dusty? I know. We're going deep. We're doing it live. Is that we just have to question things. And if it doesn't pass the sniff test, if your higher genius, your higher self, if your inner conscience, it's just question things, because we're going to get weird. It's getting weird, and we're very fast as novelty increases. It was. The space race was also about nuke tech. It definitely was. It also could have been about portals. It also could have been about this exact thing. Go out, read James Tinian, his comic book, The Department of Truth, and he's laying down a structure very similar to what I'm talking about. Right. It's really important that we lay a grounded foundation. And I think when you're doing these things is that, I lost my train of thought where we're at here. We're at drone warfare. We're at Project Bluebeam. We're way off the maps down the rabbit hole. But the idea is that UAPs are happening. The government is hiding things, obviously, and they're slow rolling this disclosure event that's happening at this time. And so, and what I'm saying is, it's just, we got to question everything, because when you're getting Fox News and MSNBC and all the mainstream media talking about these things, we know that we're in a psyop, and that's what this guy is talking about right here. We're going to go right back to it. Charlie says nobody should be told to perform ceremonial magic. Of course not. Do your own work. But like ritual, Catholic, in your churches, they're performing ritual magic, whether we want to admit so or not. But I would never dare tell anybody to do anything. Do your own work, create your own myth, understand your own life, and it can be very dangerous. You're completely right. That's why it's got the modicum of truth that Prometheus brought down the fire of the gods to the people. Fire can both heat up the hearth so we can eat fantastic things and protect ourselves and create homes and families, but it also can burn down the world as well. And when I mean world, I mean our own individual self. These things are dangerous if put in the wrong hands. And that's what I was talking about, Charlie, earlier when I was talking about the practices. It's about laying the foundations of practice. And I think those things are very important. Having an ethical moral structure, having the basic understanding of objective truth and what is real, what is empirical, what is the epistemic knowledge that we have, so we can understand that we will take nothing that we see in our visions as truth. That's what's really important. Don't take it as truth, because then it's so easy to be dissuaded and moved by the fool archetype. And so, yeah, I agree. So I'm there with you. It's I would never dare tell anybody what to do. Sometimes it's just a little too much. Is the Tree of Life just the hero's journey? Maybe. That's a good question. I'm going to ponder on that. Thank you. And yeah, sounds like the hearth is better than the burning down the world part. I completely agree. Back to trying to understand these things with other people's perspectives. Back to Sean Ryan.
So a cult recruiter could use this as easily as a psyop doing it on an entire group of people. If the psyop isn't working, there's either A, double down, or B, stop. And then you understand those needs, and you can leverage so much with human behavior.
He's talking about psyops. He's talking about cognitive dissonance.
There was a lawyer in Washington State who was arrested because he learned hypnosis and then started using hypnosis on these people in his office. That this guy would put her under hypnosis and say, and now you're coming home, it's the end of the day. You're taking out your car keys and put them in that bowl. You walk to the bathroom, you turn that hot shower on, and now the context has shifted.
Let's take a deep breath. The entire body is a vessel.
He was hypnotizing her, and she noticed one day that her bra was misplaced, like kind of pushed to the side a little bit. And that he had helped her redress or put her clothes back on. So she brought a recorder in there.
Police officers, step over here. Yes, sir.
I want to do data acquisition, figure out needs, which automatically give me insecurities and fears. And the moment that happens, figure out context, my desired context that makes the behavior I want out of you automatic.
But this also happens on an entire population.
Yeah, the dramatic, super dramatic music. I completely agree. Yeah, Caleb's right. Chase Hughes, this guy.
That you're seeing on social media.
Here we
Who
go.
voted for the other guy, then the billionaire who is funding a lot of these ideas and ideologies that you're seeing on social media.
It's kind of what we've been talking about, right?
Search and social media platforms aren't just a window into the internet.
The TV.
They
YouTube
serve
is
as our
turning more
primary
into
source of news and
TV. That's what they're going to
Joe
push it as soon.
was assassinated. Some people think it was the left. Some people think it was the right. Some people think it was Israel. Some people think it was trans. You know, at least that's what it was at the beginning. A lot of questions going on about this fucking guy that supposedly shot him.
Right? The world is burning itself. It's kind of what we're talking about, why it's important to have a good...
And I think it's enough that more
grounding.
people are going to wake up. We're going to have a lot more people in the next year.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order.
Total control will
What are
have
some
to
of the
be imposed.
psyops you see going on today?
Well,
We have no evidence that these activities are coming from a foreign entity or the work of an adversary.
Let's bring up the
Where are the
alien
drones coming
UFO, UAP shit. Is that a psyop?
People in New Jersey are concerned and demanding information after a wave of mysterious drone sightings.
When the New Jersey drones were happening, I think right before the election or whenever that was insane. Mm-hmm. And I put a video out on that and how we are in the middle of a psyop.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
Is that building a psyop? I mean, we've heard about Project Bluebeam. I think that's the false flag.
See, Project Bluebeam. We're hitting all the cues here. So Chase Hughes, just so everybody knows, is a former military intelligence chief who now works as a leading expert in human behavior, influence, and persuasion. He had a 20-year military career where he trained intelligence agencies. He founded Applied Behavior Research and wrote the #1 best-selling book, The Ellipsis Manual. I'm not saying we trust this guy. All I'm saying is it's interesting information, and it's important to have interesting information.
The drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons.
There's a lot of drones authorized. I think one started and everybody's wanting to get in the deal.
But it's not the craft. I'm not sitting here saying like these little Tic Tacs and all that stuff are a bunch of psyops. The response to it, I think, is a psyop.
A new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in
John Ryan is a former Navy
to
SEAL.
Achieve the universal
He worked for
aspirations
BlackRock
of
as a contractor
peace
as well.
And security.
We see people going out on
putting out information,
podcasts and stuff that have
interviewing
talking
a lot of people
points from the government.
Discernment is crucial.
Our government has made
agree.
contact with intelligent extraterrestrials.
And there's a reason I'm playing this in the
Something I
CY.
can't discuss in public setting.
So this was 33 was the first documented.
That is the earliest one I can talk about. Yeah,
There's something that predates that.
You could infer that.
And if you have someone that has talking points from the government, that's a spokesperson, not a whistleblower. If I'm sitting here and I say, well, I can't say this, but I can tell you this one thing. That's a controlled government release of information.
There we go. Is it conspiracy brain rot? Well, we're not rotten brains. What we're doing here is we're showing what everyone is watching. This is what people are listening to. And if they're not listening to this, they're getting a great big dose of it in the unconscious. It's everywhere at all times, whether you want to know it or not. And it's better to know it than not, because if we're understanding the world as something that is symbolic, magical, and stemming from this underground system that we've been truly talking about during everything we do, that we have to have a good place of understanding that there are people conspiring, and that is the guard dog, that there are people conspiring against us, against people, against you every day. And it is your ego. It is yourself as it goes about these things. Let me shut the door. And as we're doing this, it's really important to listen to these things, because he was talking about what is a psyop and what is a conspiracy. And this is what we're working into, is listening to the UFO disclosure as it starts to happen. Let's go there.
Yeah, so that's definitely a mouthful, but that is directly based on...
You're on the record talking about, quote, non-human life forms that could be interdimensional beings who are visiting us. Can you just explain more to people at home what that might mean?
Yeah, so that's definitely a mouthful, but that is directly based on information that we've received from witnesses, also information that we have obtained and witnessed via our investigations. There's some stuff that I can't disclose of what I have immediately seen in some of these skiffs, but what I will tell you is this is not just some crazy conspiracy theory. Obviously, there's been massive reporting, not just in the United States, but around the world.
We do have monsters at home, Caleb, I agree.
This is something that I think everyone kind of, has always had some curiosity about. We're just simply asking the questions now publicly.
And it feels like we're building towards some sort of disclosure. I know many people are hoping that Donald Trump is president, and that
stranger world we're walking in. Presidents don't matter.
About, quote, non-human life forms that could be interdimensional beings who are visiting us. Can you just explain more to people at home?
But then people call secret chiefs nonsense. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's definitely a mouthful, but that is directly
angels and demons
on, information that we've received from
monsters at home. I completely agree.
Information that we have obtained and witnessed via our investigations. There's some stuff that I can't disclose of what I have immediately seen in some of these skiffs, but what I will tell you is this is not just some crazy conspiracy theory. Obviously, there's been massive reporting, not just in the United States, but around the world. And this is something that I think everyone kind of, has always had some curiosity about. We're just simply asking the questions now publicly.
And it feels like we're building towards some sort of disclosure. I know many people are hoping that Donald Trump is president and that he's ultimately...
Oh, played twice. My bad, guys. Presidents don't matter. If any of you have seen Venture Brothers, Brock Sampson's Venture Brothers is a adult cartoon that was on Adult Swim, but it's brilliant, and I think everybody should watch it because funny things. It's a funny show, and it speaks a lot of truth, and it's satire, and it has all those things. But the president is not the president, Samson, and you know that. That's the Hunter S. Thompson character, who heads the CIA department in that cartoon. And then from that, we are going to move forward to the 3-Eye Atlas idea, and she talks about it in this, and we don't even need to listen to this so much, but it's out there everywhere at all times, and I find that to be really interesting, as well as it is real that people are building bunkers in the world. And so like the elites, as we're talking about, whoever these elites are, Zuckerberg and all these characters, they're just small fries, but they are creating these crazy bunkers. And maybe these bunkers are for the betterment of humankind because of who knows what's going to happen. The sun could implode at any moment, or, some crazy earth shifting thing would happen, and, the poles spinning on their end. And then you get, you have these bunkers that protect and save things. But, that's where we're going with this is we're getting strange on this fine November 13th evening. Yes, we could talk about healthcare and we could talk about education, and I think that's all very important, Caleb. And I do appreciate you talking about that people are fed up with, and the wealth inequality and that kind of thing. But you come here because to Magus in the media, to this kind of conversation, because there's more to it than that. And we're trying to crack so to speak, the egg open and trying to make an omelet, and we're doing it in a different way. here. We're doing it in a way to show you that there are symbols, that there are signs, that there is a mythology in the world and it's being spread. And back in the Renaissance time, it was angels and demons. Before then, it was fairies and mythologies. And in this day and age, it's UAPs and drones. And we're going kind of all over the place in reality, because reality is slowly melting itself, and we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. Every day the news is coming out with all this crazy stuff, X-Feed and Facebook and Instagram, and we're being diluted into thinking that any of that truly matters. But I do want you to know that there are things that matter. Yes, healthcare and education and wealth inequality. But at the same time, those things are part of the Hegelian dialectic. So I find it very interesting that Hegel was brought up in this video, in this live stream, because that is part of what's going on in the system, that there is this us versus them type of mentality, and it doesn't have to be that way. Because once we take control of our own nervous systems, take control of our own brain and our embodied experience that we have, then we can understand that there, yes, has been this battle of light versus darkness. It's integrated into our myths and religions. It's integrated into our very thinking, but it's not just surface level, that it goes so deep down the rabbit hole that we got to make sure that we have the correct grounding philosophically, that we have the correct grounding and understanding of materiality, as well as understanding that there is something that is more than that. And when we do that, we can have an understanding that if we take control of our body-mind syzygy, if we take control of what we eat, the symbols and the stories that we tell ourselves, and make sure we have some silence every once in a while. We make sure we breathe deeply, and we realize that we can become the hero on our journey, that all it takes is to say yes when the moment arises, and make sure we have the correct moral compass and conscience to be able to move us through these trying times, that you're not alone, and that the Illuminati that is controlling your life is you and your main core group of people around you. That then the rich people, right? And I don't like using those terms, because what does that even mean? That's a general motif. It goes back to the Hegelian dialectic and then fighting amongst ourselves, but that there are powers that be that are more than that. They don't use wealth. They don't use money. There is a master class, and that's what I'm calling the priest class, right? But I'm trying to tell you that you can become your own priest, become your own pope, become the hero on your journey. And like Link from Zelda, it's time to wake up. That we are at a catalyst here as we're spiraling out, as Tool would say in their Lateralis on that album. The beauty of our journey is that we don't have to fight amongst ourselves, and that we don't have to ostracize the other, but that we can, I promise you, Caleb, that they use wealth. I agree. There are people who use wealth and money, but people at the high, people that we don't have the names for, they use symbols. They use status. And that money, like the Federal Reserve System, which should crumble, right? We should move on to this new thing, and we already are. We know blockchain is coming. We know the world is changing. And so what we have to do is we have to understand, and we don't have to do anything. We can just stay asleep. You can stay in this world that we're in, or we could go through the practices and the embodied experience to be able to understand that there is so much more to the world, than we could ever truly imagine. And it goes back to the Western esoteric tradition. It goes back to the Eastern mystical practices. It goes back to the ancients and the philosophical, that we can move past the Enlightenment period of the material world and we can understand what it gave us and the beauty of the things that we can move into. But know that what the stories are trying to tell you is that you have a seed of divinity within you. And when we have the knowledge and the know-how and to prepare the temple to be able to awaken that seed, then the fallen world isn't fallen any longer, because that's the symbolic value of what we're doing on the hero's journey. And so tonight, I hope through this wonderful live stream, I appreciate every single person out there, that I hope we can continue to have these conversations, that what we do from here on out is up to you and it's in your hands. That, as Charlie just said back here, I do agree. At least the hero's journey is part of the pattern, cycles, wheels, whatever you want to call it. You also have the clip loft, though, and that's why I named this live stream the way it was, and I named multiple live streams like that. The fallen world, that Malkuth at the bottom of the tree in that 10th Sephirah. What it is it's the lower parts of those quarters are integrated into the roots of the clip-loft of the lower side of the tree, and that's where the hollow, the Goetia, the demonic, right? These types of things, they dwell. But every single one of those pieces has a spark of divinity with it. And so while we're traveling upon this, in this realm of existence on this earth, what we must understand is that once you look into the eyes of another, know that that spark of divinity is within them. And no matter who they are, what realm or status or whatever, that everyone is just trying to figure it out. And in the end, like Edward and Elric, or like anybody on like any even evil villain in our mythologies, everybody has the ability to wake up. And we just have to help each other. And that's all that there is. And so if you have a better understanding of tonight through the understanding that if you find your own myth and understand the stories that are brought to us, that reality itself is spiraling out, and that as it spirals out, we must ground and we must root, because everything that is happening outside into the world, like in UK, as V for Vendetta, the new series is coming out, as Alan Moore is grumbling like the old man that he is. He's a brilliant old man, but his movies, he wrote all these scripts and these stories for people that paid him, and they're not his. And so those movies are now going to be putrefied. And as my own inner old man grumbles about it, what we can do is see that there are sparks of brilliance in some of these things. And when they're not, we just don't watch them and we don't give them our money, right? And as more psyops and cognitive dissonance happens amongst people on this side or another, that we don't have to fall into the dialectic as happens, that we can go back to our practice. We can become our own inner magi, our own inner warrior, right? Our own lover, our own magician, and make sure that we have a wonderful everyday existence. Because the last few days, the Aurora Borealis has been out and it's been beautiful. I've seen a very little of it, but I've seen a lot of beautiful pictures, and you can feel that the world is different when beautiful things are there. So make sure, no matter what happens, go touch grass, go get the sun, go eat healthy, go read a good book, integrate its meanings and lessons, and, try to do the best that we can. And so I want to say, if there's any other questions, any comments, I appreciate everybody out there tonight. This This is the longest live stream that we've done. And so everyone who has been listening throughout this fine evening know that we're just touching on little bits and pieces of this fallen world, of the Matrix, of Malkuth, of this strange realm we call Earth, because in the end, we are all in it together. And there is a great story being told. I've said it last stream, and I'm going to say it this time. Anybody out there, I highly recommend reading Promethea by Alan Moore, because that entire story, if you want to have a good gist of the Western esoteric tradition, what the Tree of Life is about, what imagination, magic, and mysticism are all about, the intentionality, the growing of the will, the understanding that stories are more than just fiction, but they become reality with with your own integration of these things, and that what we think, what we say, how we act really are being embodied and mirrored with our everyday existence, and that no matter who we are or what we do, that you are never truly alone, that we are here together, that consciousness is all just one thing trying to express itself outwardly. And so I appreciate everybody. And I would like to say thank you for coming on this wild journey we called life together. And again, if you haven't, subscribe, like, and share, because here you are watching Magus in the Media, where we unfold, we dissect, and we try to understand the hidden myth, meaning, and magic in the stories that we love.